All right, so it's now the kids portion of the service, and it's so nice to have kids here for it. I have been doing this for months, and I cannot remember if I've even had a kid in the sanctuary when I have been doing this. There may have been once or twice, but not very often. So it's very exciting, and I'm hoping that we have some brave kids out there who are willing to answer some questions, even though you're in a room full of adults. And I know we have some older kids here who are going to be maybe helpers. You're welcome to answer too, especially if the little kids are having a hard time getting it. It'd be great to have your help. All right, so this morning we're talking about worshiping God. So my first question is for the kids is, what does it mean to worship God? Do we have anyone that can give a stab at what it means to worship God? Any brave souls out there? Any hands? Oh, feeling a little shy about this one. That's okay. So, when I was a kid, we would pray together as a family. And every day of the week, we had a different thing that we would pray for. And it was based on the day of the week. I don't know why we didn't do this on Wednesday for worship. But anyways, Tuesday, our theme for the day was telling God how special he is. And I think that's just a good way to kind of understand what worship is. It's our way of telling God. We know that God is this great, powerful God, and it's telling him that, or showing him by what we do, that he is great and that we recognize that he is wonderful. So that kind of helps us to understand a little bit what worshiping God is. And now we want to talk about how we might worship God, which is another chance for you all to be brave. And can you think about ways that you can worship God? I have some on some pieces of paper here, but if you give me an answer that's not on the paper, totally fine. It's great because there's going to be a lot more ideas than what I have. So any ideas about how we might worship God? Any kids have some answers about how we might worship God? Trying to make sure. Oh, we have an answer over here. Yes? Singing! I figured that might be the first one that we have come out, because it's the first thing we kind of think about when we're worshiping God. And, when we're at church, we talk about a worship team and worship music. And so a lot of times we associate worship with singing, but there's actually a lot of other ways that we could do it. I see another hand over here. Dancing, well, that'd be a great way to worship God, right? Because we can get all excited about God and we can dance for him. It mentions in the Bible that David danced for joy before God, and that's a great way to worship him. I wish I had that on my piece of paper. It's not one of the ones I had, but it's a great answer. Yes. Playing, like playing with your friends and that sort of thing. All right, good. So I'm going to put one up there that's kind of like that. I talked about helping people, right? So when you're playing with your friends, you can help them and you can be kind to them. And that is a way that we can be worshiping God because he made our friends. And so he wants us to be kind to them and to be helping them. So I'm going to put in helping others. Any other thoughts from the kids about how we might worship God? Ideas. It's okay if we don't have any more. I can share the rest of the ideas that I have. All right. So another one I have here is reading the Bible. And I thought that might be a good way to worship God, especially the Psalms, I think, are a great place to go to when we want to worship God and we're reading our Bible, because the Psalms are filled with praise for God and talking about how great he is. So reading our Bible can be a good way to worship God. And then I have here praying. So when we pray, we can tell God that he's pretty great. And I think that's an important part of praying that sometimes we forget about. So we want to make sure part of our praying is telling God how special he is, which is worshiping him. All right, I've got two more here. So this next one is obeying. So God has given us some rules in the Bible that he wants us to obey. And if we obey those rules, it's telling God that we recognize that he knows best and what he tells us to do are good things to do. And so that's a way of worshiping him, saying, I honor you and what you have asked me to do. And then the last one I have is about enjoying nature. And so oftentimes we go out in nature, and this time of year, we've got some, colors on the leaves and that sort of thing, or there might be a beautiful sunset you see, and when you go out there and you say, oh, that's amazing, and we remember that God is the one that made all of the things that surround us, that is a way of worshiping him. All right, so one last question for the kids. I won't put you on the spot after this. So my last question is, do you think that we can worship God by ourselves? Is it possible to worship God? And you can like nod your head or shake your head, or you can put your hand up and answer. What do you think? Is it possible to worship God all by yourself? I see some nods. And I would agree, totally. We can totally worship God by ourselves. A lot of these things we can sing on our own. We can read the Bible on our own. We can pray on our own. We can enjoy nature. Lots of things that we can do to worship God by ourselves. But there's also something special about worshiping God with other people. So I want the kids, and the adults can join in with this, is to think about if you've ever been on a sports team, or you have been in a concert or in a play, and you had people come to cheer you on. Okay? So maybe you've had that, and maybe if not, that you can imagine that. And if you've had that sort of thing, I want you to imagine what kind of audience you would like to have. So we're going to put 2 videos up there, and we're going to see which one you think you would like better. So would you like this to be the people cheering you on at a concert? We'll see if we can get, are you, okay? So this is our, all right. So we have one person sitting out there clapping quite enthusiastically, but we just have one person. Or would you prefer to have this? So what do you think? Would you rather have the one person or the big crowd of people cheering for you? The big crowd of people cheering for you. I know as a musician, and I've also done some acting, that I love performing for a full house. It's so much better to play for a huge crowd of people or perform for a huge crowd of people than just having a few people out there. And you see them all, and they're standing and they're cheering for you. Oh, it feels so good. And I wonder if that might be what God feels like when everyone gathers together to be worshiping him. But the cool thing is that God actually gets to experience that, no matter whether we're on our own or separate, because there are people all around the world that are worshiping God all at the same time. So that's kind of cool. When I was a teenager, I worked at camp, and one of the activities we did as a staff, at a staff meeting, is that we were asked to all pray out loud at the same time. So we were all individually praying to God, but we prayed out loud. And so there was like all these voices all at the same time. And to me, it sounded chaotic, right? You hear all this and you're like, I can't make sense of what's happening. But it was just neat to think about the fact that God heard all of those prayers at the same time, and they made sense to him, and he's able to understand each person, even though there's so many people all through the world who are worshiping him and talking to him at the same time. So that's kind of a neat thing, that God gets that experience of the big audience cheering for him. But I also wonder if you've ever been in one of those crowds that's cheering people on. Like maybe you've been to a sporting event and you're part of a big crowd that's like cheering for people. There is something special about that too. You could be at home and you could cheer for your sports team, and you could be by yourself and watching on TV, and that's fun. But it's so much more exciting when you're surrounded by people who are also cheering on the same team. You get more pumped up and you want your team to win even more because there's all sorts of people who are joining with you and cheering on. And that is what I think is special about worshiping God together in a group. Because we get excited when other people are excited. And so when we're singing songs to God, we can get like pumped up in our enthusiasm for God because other people are excited too. So that's the cool thing of us being able to come back to church in person, that we're able to join together with other people. And it's not just me praising God, but it's a whole group of people. And that being surrounded by people who are praising God and worshiping God together is really exciting. So I just want to remind you that we are made to worship God, and he desires for us to worship him. So I just have one verse I'm going to read here to finish off. So this is from John 4:23. The time is coming when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. And that time is here already. You see, the Father, too, is actively seeking such people to worship. So he's looking for people who will worship him in spirit and in truth. So I want to encourage you this week, whether it's by yourself or with your family or here at church where you're surrounded by other people, to look for opportunities to be able to worship God.